The alarm screamed through the colony ship Independence, and Captain Jake Morrison knew they were in serious trouble. He had been running this vessel for 3 years through the outer regions of explored space, and he had seen plenty of problems before, but this was different. The fuel cells were dying faster than anyone had predicted, and they were still 2 weeks from the nearest human station. Jake stood on the bridge watching the red warning lights flash across every console. His first officer, a woman named Kate Hughes, looked at him with worry in her eyes. "Captain, we need to make a decision soon," she said, her voice steady despite the fear they both felt. "If we don't find fuel or a safe place to land, we have maybe 5 days before life support fails." 40 people lived on this ship, 40 colonists heading toward a new world where they could build homes and start fresh lives. 40 souls who trusted Jake to keep them alive. And right now, he had no idea how to do that. The Independence drifted through empty space, passing a dead moon that orbited a gas giant. The moon was called Zerath according to the star charts, and it was marked as uninhabited. No atmosphere, no resources, nothing useful. But as they passed it, the sensors picked up something strange. Kate leaned forward, studying her screen. "Captain, I'm reading a signal from the moon's surface. It's faint, but it's definitely artificial." Jake felt hope stir in his chest. Maybe it was an old fuel depot or an abandoned station. Anything that could help them survive a few more days. "What kind of signal?" "It's an emergency beacon," she replied. "But Captain, it's not human. The frequency matches Elvish military codes." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew about the elves. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They controlled the Galactic Council, and they had made it very clear what they thought of humanity. Humans were too young, too aggressive, too dangerous. The elves had blocked human expansion into dozens of star systems and refused to grant humanity full membership in the Council. Jack had never met an elf in person, but he had heard the stories. They were beautiful and cold, treating other species like children at best and pests at worst and right. Now one of them was sending a distress signal from a dead moon. "We should keep going," Kate said quietly. "Whatever happened to them is not our problem. We barely have enough resources to save ourselves." Jake knew she was right. Helping an elf could bring trouble with the Galactic Council. It could even be seen as interfering in Elvish military affairs. But as he stared at that signal blinking on the screen, he thought about what his father had taught him years ago on Earth. His father had been a rescue worker who died pulling people from a collapsed building. And he had always said the same thing: when you find someone who needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. You help. Because it's right. Take us down." "Jake," ordered, his voice firm, "we're going to check it out." Kate started to protest, but she saw the look in his eyes and nodded. "Yes, Captain." The Independence descended towards Zerath, using precious fuel to navigate through the debris field that surrounded the moon. As they got closer, the sensors showed more details. There had been a battle here recently. Pieces of Elvish ships floated in the void, still glowing hot from weapons fire. Then they found the escape pod. It was small and elegant, like everything the elves made, but it was damaged badly. One side was torn open to space, and the life support systems were flickering on the edge of failure. Jake brought the Independence alongside it and sent 2 crew members out in spacesuits to bring it aboard. When they opened the pod in the cargo bay, Jake got his first look at an elf. She was tall and thin, with silver hair that fell past her shoulders, even covered in dried blood and burns. She was the most beautiful person Jake had ever seen. Her armor was made of some kind of white metal that seemed to glow faintly, and it was cracked in dozens of places, revealing deep wounds beneath. But what caught Jake's attention were the 2 small creatures curled up next to her. They looked like lizards, but with scales that shimmered blue and gold and tiny wings folded against their backs. The sensors had detected them as simple animals, but something about the way they watched Jake with intelligent eyes made him think they were much more than pets get. "Heard a medical," Jake ordered, "and be careful with those creatures. We don't know what they are." The ship's doctor, a man named Carlos Rivera, worked on the elf woman for hours. Jake stood outside the medical bay, watching through the window as Carlos cleaned wound-stitched cuts and pumped her full of medicine that might or might not work on Elvish biology. The 2 small creatures stayed close to her the entire time, making soft chirping sounds whenever Carlos touched her. They didn't try to attack, but they watched everything with those strange, intelligent eyes. Finally, Carlos came out looking exhausted. "She's alive," he said, "but barely. Whoever did this to her wanted her dead. She has burns from energy weapons, 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and about a dozen other injuries that should have killed her. Will she survive?" Jake asked. Carlos shrugged. "Maybe she lost a lot of blood, and I don't know enough about elf medicine to be sure. But I did what I could now. We wait and see if she's strong enough to pull through." Jake nodded and walked back to the bridge. They had used almost half their remaining fuel to land on Zerath and rescue one elf woman. Kate was right. This might have been a mistake that would cost all of them their lives. But as Jake sat in his command chair and thought about that broken woman lying in medical bay, he knew he would make the same choice again his father had taught him, that being human meant helping others even when it was hard, even when it cost you something. 3 days passed and the elf woman remained unconscious. The ship's resources continued to drain away and the crew started to whisper among themselves, questioning their captain's decision to rescue an enemy. Then on the 4th morning, Jake was drinking terrible coffee in the mess hall when the alarm sounded again, but this time it was not a system failure. It was the security alert from medical bay. Jake ran through the corridors and burst into medical to find the elf woman awake and trying to kill Carlos. She had him pinned against the wall with one hand around his throat. Despite her injuries, she moved with impossible speed and strength. Her violet eyes were wild with fear and rage, and she was shouting something in a language Jake didn't understand. The 2 small creatures were on her shoulders now, making high-pitched sounds that hurt Jake's ears. "Stop," Jake yelled in the common trade language that most species used. "Stop, he's trying to help you." The elf woman turned to look at him, and for a moment Jake thought she was going to attack him too. But then something changed in her eyes. The rage faded slightly, replaced by confusion. "Where am I?" she demanded in heavily accented common. "Who are you?" Jake held up his hands, showing he was unarmed. "You're on the human colony ship Independence. We found you in an escape pod near Xerath. You were dying. So we brought you aboard." The elf stared at him like he had said something impossible. "Humans." She repeated the word as if it tasted strange. "In her mouth, you rescued me." The elf woman released Carlos and he stumbled backward, gasping for air. Jake moved between them, keeping his body language calm and non-threatening. The 2 small creatures on her shoulders watched him with eyes that seemed far too intelligent for simple animals. "As we rescued you," Jake said slowly. "We picked up your distress beacon and found you in an escape pod. You were badly injured." The elf looked down at her bandaged body, as if seeing the wounds for the first time. Her silver hair fell across her face and Jake noticed her hands were shaking. "Why would humans help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your kind has every reason to hate mine." Jake shrugged. "Because you needed help, that's reason enough." She stared at him for a long moment and Jake saw something shift in those violet eyes. The suspicion remained. But now there was confusion too, as if he had done something that did not make sense in her understanding of the universe. "My name is Lily Starweave," she said, finally, "and these are Spark and Ember." She gestured to the 2 creatures on her shoulders. "They are my companions." Jake noticed she used the word companions, not pets. There was something significant about that distinction. "What happened to you, Lily? Who attacked your ship?" Lily's expression darkened and she touched one of the creatures gently. Spark made a soft chirping sound that almost sounded sad. "My own people," she said. The words came out bitter and angry. "I am Princess Lily Starweave III, daughter of the Eternal Throne, and my family tried to have me killed." The medical bay went silent. Jake had rescued a princess, and not just any princess, but one who was running from her own government. This was worse than he thought this could bring. The entire elvish fleet down on the Independence. "Why would they do that?" Jake asked. Lily sat down on the medical bed, wincing at her injuries. "Because I committed the greatest crime an elf can commit." She looked up at him with defiant eyes. "I told the truth before the High Council. I stood in the Grand Chamber and I said that humans deserve recognition, that your species has earned the right to full council membership." Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. "You defended humanity." Lily nodded. "I have been watching your species for years, studying your history, your culture, the way you explore and build and dream. The council calls you dangerous and aggressive, but I see something different. I see a young species with incredible potential. My people are afraid of you because you remind them of what we used to be before we became cold and distant, and they tried to kill you for saying this." Lily touched her side where the worst of her wounds were hidden under bandages. "My eldest sister sent assassins. They sabotaged my ship during a diplomatic mission to the outer system. Spark and Ember got me to the escape pod. But barely." She looked at the two creatures with obvious affection. "They saved my life." Jake studied the creatures more closely now that he knew they were important. Spark was the blue one with scales that looked like pieces of sky. Ember was gold, like captured sunlight. They were each about the size of a house cat. But something about them made Jake think of much larger beings compressed into smaller forms. "What are they exactly?" Jake asked. Lily smiled for the first time, and it transformed her face, making her look younger, less like a princess and more like a person. "They are dragons," she said, as if this explained everything. "Dragons." Jake repeated the word carefully, like dragons from Earth legends. Lily looked surprised. "You have legends of dragons. Many cultures on Earth have stories about them," Jake said. "But they're myths, creatures from fairy tales." Lily shook her head. "Not myths, memories. Your people must have met dragons long ago before you went to the stars." She paused, then added, "Dragons are ancient beings older than most species in the galaxy. They can change their size and shape, and they bond with certain individuals. My family has been bonded to dragon companions for 10,000 years. As if to demonstrate, Spark suddenly grew from cat-sized to as large as a dog, filling half the medical bay with shimmering blue scales. Ember did the same, becoming a gold dragon that made the lights flicker with reflected color. Carlos yelped and backed against the wall. Then just as quickly, both dragons shrank back down to their small forms and chirped innocently. Jake felt his heart pounding. These were not simple pets. These were something powerful and ancient, and he had just brought them onto his ship without any idea what they were capable of. Lily seemed to sense his fear. "Do not worry," she said. "They will not harm anyone unless I am threatened. They are gentle, unless there is need." Jake took a deep breath, trying to process everything he had just learned. He had rescued an elvish princess who was fleeing from assassins. She had defended humanity before the council and nearly died for it. And she traveled with dragons, actual living dragons. This changed everything. Over the next few days, Lily recovered with surprising speed. Carlos said her biology was different from humans. She healed faster and seemed to need less food and water. But she spent most of her time in medical bay, refusing to come out and interact with the crew. Jake visited her every day, bringing her meals and trying to make her feel welcome. At first, she was distant and formal, speaking to him like he was a servant. But slowly she began to open up. She told him about her home world, about cities that floated in the clouds and forests that sang with ancient magic. She described the High Council, where representatives from dozens of species gathered to make laws and settle disputes. She explained how the elves had controlled the council for millennia, and how they used that power to keep younger species like humanity from gaining too much influence. And she told him about her family. "My father is the eternal king," she said one evening as Jake sat with her in medical. Spark and Ember were curled up sleeping on her lap. "He has ruled for 3,000 years, and he believes that humans are too dangerous to be trusted. My eldest sister thinks like him. She will be queen one day, and she will continue the same policies, but you think differently," Jake said. Lily nodded. "I think my people have forgotten what it means to grow and change. We have been powerful for so long that we have become afraid of anything that might challenge us. Humans scare us because you are ambitious, because you reach for the stars with both hands instead of waiting for permission." She looked at Jake directly, and he saw sadness in her eyes. "I thought if I could make the council see what I see, if I could show them that humans are not monsters but people who deserve respect, then maybe we could change. Maybe we could build something better. Instead, they called me a traitor and sent assassins to silence me." Jake did not know what to say. He had grown up hearing that the elves looked down on humanity, that they saw humans as barely civilized animals. But here was an elvish princess who had risked everything to defend his species. "Thank you," he said finally, "for trying." Lily smiled sadly. "I failed," she said. But perhaps one day I will have another chance. What will you do now? Jake asked. We are heading to Port Harmony, a human station. You can request asylum. There Lily looked at Spark and Ember, who had woken up and were watching her with concerned eyes. I do not know, she admitted for the first time in my life. I do not know what comes next. The Independence limped through space toward Port Harmony with fuel reserves dropping every hour. Jake knew they would make it. But barely. The crew was getting nervous and the whispers in the corridors were getting louder. People were scared and they wanted someone to blame. Lily stayed in medical bay for the first week. But eventually Carlos told her she was healed enough to move around the ship. Jake offered her a spare cabin near the crew quarters and helped her move her few belongings. The dragon Spark and Ember followed them through the corridors, their claws clicking on the metal floors. The crew stared as they passed, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Jake heard someone mutter, "Traitor," under their breath. But he could not tell if they meant Lily or him. That evening Jake found Lily standing in the observation deck staring out at the stars. Spark and Ember were on her shoulders back to their small size. She looked lonely, standing there in borrowed clothes that did not fit quite right. Her royal armor locked away in storage. May I join you? Jake asked. Lily turned and nodded. Please. She said I would welcome the company. Jake stood next to her looking out at the same stars. Your people must have stations out here. He said rescue ships that could help you. Why didn't you call them? Lily was quiet for a moment. Because any elvish ship that finds me will either kill me or take me back to my family, which amounts to the same thing. She touched Spark gently. I am dead. To my people now, the only question is whether they make it official. Jake felt anger rise in his chest at the injustice of it. You tried to help them see reason and they threw you away. Lily smiled, but there was no humor in it. That is the price of speaking truth to power, Captain. My people have been powerful for so long that they cannot imagine being wrong about anything. She paused, then added, but you humans, you are different. You still remember how to change, how to adapt. That is why you scare us. Over the following days, something unexpected began to happen. Lily started spending time with the crew. At first, people avoided her, remembering all the stories about cold, heartless elves, but Lily was not cold. She was curious and kind and genuinely interested in learning about humans. She helped Kate in the engine room, asking questions about human technology and offering suggestions based on elvish designs. She taught the navigation officer, a woman named Diana Lopez, about the ancient star songs that elvish pilots used to navigate through dangerous space. She even spent time in the galley helping the cook prepare meals, though she admitted she had never cooked anything in her life as a princess. And everywhere she went, Spark and Ember followed, making friends with the crew. The dragons seemed to love attention and would perform tricks, growing and shrinking, showing off their shimmering scales, breathing tiny puffs of harmless fire that made children laugh. Jake watched Lily transform from a frightened refugee into someone who smiled and laughed, someone who belonged, and he found himself looking forward to the times when she would seek him out, to talk about everything from galactic politics to Earth music. One night, they sat together in the observation deck as had become their habit. Lily was teaching Jake some words in the elvish language which sounded like music when she spoke it. Your people have such interesting names, she said. What does Morrison mean? Jake shrugged. Honestly, I don't know. It's just a name that got passed down through my family. My father never told me if it had a special meaning. Lily looked thoughtful. On my world, names carry power and history. Starweave means one who binds the light of stars into patterns. My family has carried that name for 100 generations. That sounds like a lot of pressure, Jake said. Lily laughed. It is. She looked at Spark and Ember, who were playing some kind of game, chasing each other around the deck sometimes. I think they have the right idea. Just live in the moment and don't worry about the weight of history. Jake noticed how much she had changed in just 2 weeks. The cold, suspicious princess was gone, replaced by someone warmer, more human in a strange way. You seem happier, he said. Lily stopped laughing and looked at him seriously. I am, she said, for the first time in my long life, I am free, Captain Jake Morrison. I do not have duties or obligations or the weight of the throne pressing down on me. I can just be Lily. She paused, then added, and I have you and your crew to thank for that. You could have left me to die. You could have turned me over to my people for a reward, but instead you gave me sanctuary. Jake felt uncomfortable with her gratitude. We just did what was right. Lily shook her head. No, you did more than that. You showed me that humans are exactly what I believed you to be: brave and kind and willing to help even when it costs you something. She reached out and touched his hand briefly. I will not forget this. The moment was interrupted by the ship's alarm. Jake ran to the bridge with Lily right behind him. Kate was already there, her face pale, as she stared at the sensor screen. Captain, we have a problem, she said. 3 Elvish warships just dropped out of hyperspace and they are headed straight for us. Jake's heart sank. They found us. Lily pushed forward to look at the screen, her expression hardening when she saw the ship configurations. Those are Royal Guard vessels, she said. My sister's personal fleet. She looked at Jake with fear in her eyes. If they catch us, they will destroy your ship and everyone on it to get to me. How long do we have? Jake asked. Kate checked her calculations. Maybe 30 minutes before they are in weapons range. We are too slow and too low on fuel to outrun them. The bridge crew looked at Jake, waiting for orders, waiting for him to pull off a miracle. But Jake had no miracles left. They were trapped light years from help with 3 warships bearing down on them. Lily stepped forward. I can end this, she said quietly. If I take a shuttle and go to them, they will leave you alone. Your crew will be safe. Absolutely not, Jake said. You know what they will do to you? Lily met his eyes calmly. It is my choice to make. Captain, you saved my life when you had no reason to. Now let me save yours. Jake wanted to argue, wanted to find another way, but he could see the determination in Lily's face. She had made her decision. Then Spark and Ember did something that shocked everyone. They grew to their full size, filling the entire bridge with scales and wings and ancient power. Ember roared with a sound that shook the ship, and Spark spoke in a voice that echoed like thunder. No dragon will allow their bonded to surrender to death. Lily looked at her companions with tears in her eyes. But the crew Spark turned those intelligent eyes on Jake. The human captain showed mercy when others would have shown cruelty. The human crew offered friendship when others offered only hatred. Dragons remember debts, Captain Morrison, and we will not let you face this danger alone. Ember added, we have been small and quiet, but we are ancient, and we are powerful. If those ships want our Lily, they will have to go through us first. Jake felt hope stir in his chest for the first time. Are you saying you can stop 3 warships, Spark? And Ember looked at each other and made a sound that might have been laughter. We are dragons, little human. We can stop much more than that. Lily wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. Then let us show my sister's ships what it means to threaten those under dragon protection. Jake grinned despite their desperate situation. All hands to battle stations, he ordered. This is going to be interesting. Spark and Ember shot out from the Independence like shooting stars, their bodies growing larger with every second, until they were each the size of a shuttlecraft. Their scales blazed with light blue and gold, turning the darkness of space into something beautiful and terrifying. Jake watched from the bridge as the 2 dragons positioned themselves between his ship and the approaching Elvish warships. The crew was silent, every eye fixed on the impossible sight outside their windows. The lead Elvish ship opened a communication channel and a face appeared on the screen. It was an elf woman who looked similar to Lily, but colder, with hard eyes and a cruel smile. She wore armor that marked her as royalty, little sister. The woman said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. What have you done making friends with humans and hiding behind your pets? How far you have fallen. Lily stepped forward so everyone could see her on the screen. Her shoulders were back and her chin was high. Hello, Elena, she said, her voice steady. I should have known Father would send you to finish what the assassins started. Elena laughed. It is not personal, Lily. You know that you broke the highest laws of our people. You spoke treason before the council, and now you shame us further by seeking protection from these animals. She glanced dismissively at Jake and the crew, her disgust obvious. Jake felt anger burn in his chest, but he kept quiet. This was Lily's fight. These animals, as you call them, saved my life. Lily said they showed me more kindness in 2 weeks than our family has shown me in 200 years. Elena rolled her eyes, always so dramatic. Lily, you were never suited for the throne, too soft, too sentimental. Father should have known. You would embarrass us eventually. She leaned forward. Now return to us and accept your punishment, or we will destroy that ship and everyone on it. Your choice. Lily looked at Jake, and he saw the fear in her eyes but also determination. She opened her mouth to respond, but Spark interrupted, speaking in that thunderous dragon voice that echoed across the communication channel. The bonded one will not surrender. Alina's expression changed from cruel amusement to shock. Dragons, she whispered. You bonded with 2 dragons. How is that possible? Ember spoke now, her voice like music made of fire. It is possible when one is worthy, and Princess Lily Starweave is worthy of our protection. Something her family clearly cannot understand. Elena recovered from her surprise and her face hardened. It does not matter, dragons or not. You cannot stop 3 royal warships. Surrender now or face destruction. Park and Ember looked at each other, and Jake could have sworn they were grinning. Then they did something that made the entire crew gasp. They began to grow larger and larger until they were each the size of the elvish warships themselves. Their scales shone with power that made the sensors scream warnings, and their eyes blazed like stars. We are Spark and Ember Elena of the Cold Throne. Ember said, her voice filling the void of space. We have lived since before your species learned to walk. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have burned worlds and protected worlds. And we do not take orders from spoiled children playing at war. Lena looked genuinely frightened now. You dare threaten the royal fleets? Park laughed, and the sound was like avalanches. We do not threaten. We promise turn your ships around and leave, or learn why ancient species fear the name dragon. Elena tried to recover her composure, but Jake could see her hands shaking on the screen. She looked at someone off camera. Probably her military commander, then back at the screen. Very well, she said. But understand this, Lily. You are now an enemy of the eternal throne. If we see you again, there will be no mercy in you humans. She glared at Jake. You have made a powerful enemy today. The council will hear of this. Jake stepped forward so Elena could see him clearly. Then let me make something clear to you and your council. We found someone who needed help and we helped her. That is what humans do. If that makes us your enemies, then we will face whatever comes, but we will not apologize for doing what was right. Elena stared at him with hatred. Then the screen went dark. The 3 elvish warships turned and jumped into hyperspace, leaving the Independence alone in the darkness. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the entire crew erupted in cheers. Lily collapsed into a chair, looking exhausted and relieved. Spark and Ember shrank back down to their small size and flew through the airlock back onto the bridge, where they landed on Lily's shoulders, chirping happily. Jake walked over to Lily and sat down next to her. You okay? He asked. Lily looked at him, and suddenly she was crying. Not sad tears, but tears of relief and gratitude. I am more than okay, she said. I am free, truly free. For the first time, she touched Spark and Ember gently. Thank you, my friends, for protecting me and my new family. Spark nuzzled against her cheek. We would do it again 1,000 times. The journey to Port Harmony took another week, but it felt different now. The crew no longer whispered in corners. Instead, they celebrated Lily, openly asking her to teach them Elvish songs and telling her stories about Earth. She became part of the family in a way that felt natural and right. When they finally docked at Port Harmony, Jake knew things were about to get complicated. The Galactic Council would hear about what happened. 3 royal warships had been turned away by dragons protecting a human vessel. It would cause waves across the entire galaxy. Lily stood with Jake at the airlock as the crew prepared to disembark. She looked nervous, playing with a strand of her silver hair. What will you do now? Jake asked. Lily took a deep breath. I will request political asylum among humans, she said. If your government will have me, I want to live here to learn more about your people, to help build bridges between our species. She looked at him. Hopefully. That is, if you think I would be welcome. Jake smiled. You saved our lives, Lily, and you showed us that not all elves are our enemies. Of course you are welcome. Lily hugged him, suddenly catching him by surprise. Thank you, Jake Morrison, she whispered, for everything. When they stepped off the ship, they were met by a crowd of reporters and officials. News of the dragon confrontation had already spread across human space. Everyone wanted to see the elvish princess who had defected and the human captain who had sheltered her. Lily stood before the cameras, Spark and Ember on her shoulders, and she spoke clearly and confidently. My name is Princess Lily Starweave, and I am requesting political asylum among humanity. I can no longer support the policies of the Eternal Throne policies that deny humans their rightful place in the galactic community. I believe humans are not the enemy my people fear, but the partners we need. The reporters went wild shouting questions, but Lily held up her hand. I know this will cause problems with the council. She continued, but some things are worth fighting for. Justice is worth fighting for, truth is worth fighting for, and the human crew of the Independence showed me what those words really mean. Jake stood beside her as cameras flashed and reporters shouted, and he realized that everything was about to change. The story of how he rescued an elvish princess would spread across the galaxy. It would reach the council, it would reach Lily's family, and it would change the relationship between humans and elves forever. But as he looked at Lily standing proud and free with her dragons beside her, Jake knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant changing the entire galaxy, and he was ready for whatever came next. 7 years passed and Jake Morrison barely recognized his own life anymore. He stood on the bridge of the HSC, Hope, the newest and most advanced vessel in the human fleet. It was not just a human ship, though, it was the first joint construction project between humans and elves, a symbol of the alliance that had formed after Lily Starweave's defection. Captain Morrison Kate Hughes said from her position as first officer, "We are getting readings of a large fleet approaching fast." Jake felt old instincts kick in. Even after 7 years of peace, he still remembered that day when elvish warships had almost destroyed the Independence. What kind of fleet? Kate checked her sensors, her face going pale. Elvish Royal Guard. 30 ships headed straight for her, so the bridge went silent. Jake felt his heart hammering in his chest. 30 warships was enough to destroy the entire human defense fleet. It was an invasion force. Open a channel, Jake ordered, trying to keep his voice calm. Let's find out what they want. But before Kate could respond, one ship broke away from the formation and approached alone. It was massive. A dreadnought-class vessel painted in the silver and blue colors of the royal house. It was the kind of ship that could level a planet. The communication channel opened and Jake found himself staring at a face he had not seen in 7 years. Lily Starweave stood on the screen, but she was transformed. She wore full royal armor that shone like starlight, and a crown rested on her silver. Hairspark and Ember were behind her, massive. Now each one the size of a building, their scales blazing with power. Captain Morrison, Lily said, and despite all the royal trappings, her smile was warm and genuine. The same smile he remembered from those nights in the observation deck. I believe you once told me that humans always pay their debts. Jake felt emotion rise in his throat. Lily, you look like a queen. She finished because I am. She gestured behind her at the 30 warships. My sister Elena has taken the throne, and our first act as the new Eternal Council is this. The screen split to show an official document with the seal of the Elvish throne. Humanity is granted full council status. Lily read aloud. All systems previously denied are opened for colonization and settlement. All sanctions are lifted, and this fleet has been assigned as permanent allies to the Human Defense Force. Jake's crew erupted in cheers. People were hugging and crying and shouting with joy. Jake just stared at the screen, unable to believe what he was hearing. Lily continued speaking, but now she dropped the formal tone and spoke directly to Jake. Effective immediately. You, Captain Jake Morrison, are appointed as the joint commander of the Human Elvish Alliance fleet. Your courage and compassion 7 years ago saved my life and changed the course of galactic history. She paused and her voice became softer. It is time we returned. The favor. Jake found his voice. How did this happen, Lily? The last. I heard your family had declared you an enemy of the throne. Lily smiled. A lot can change in 7 years, Jake. After I was granted asylum, I began working with human diplomats to improve relations between our species. It was slow work, but we made progress. Then 3 years ago, my father became ill. Elena was supposed to inherit the throne, but she had made many enemies with her cruel policies. Spark spoke now, his voice rumbling through the speakers. The other royal families saw an opportunity. They approached Lily and offered their support if she would challenge Elena for the throne. It was a risk, Lily admitted. But I had spent years among humans learning about democracy and justice and the courage to stand up for what is right. She looked directly at Jake. You taught me that, Jake. You and your crew showed me that doing the right thing matters even when it is hard, even when it costs you everything. So, you challenged your sister? Kate asked, her eyes wide. Lily nodded. The trial lasted 6 months. It involved political maneuvering, ancient rituals, and more than a few assassination attempts. But in the end, the Council of Families voted in my favor. Elena was stripped of her title and exiled. I became queen 3 months ago. And your first act was to help humanity. Jake said. Lily shook her head. No. My first act was to abolish the laws that made speaking truth a crime. My second act was to open investigations into the corruption and cruelty that had defined our government for centuries. She smiled. And helping humanity was my third act. But it was the one I was most excited about. Ember spoke, her voice musical. You humans showed our Lily kindness when she had nothing. You protected her when your own lives were at risk. That is a debt that must be honored. Lily leaned forward on the screen. I told you once, Jake, that humans showed me mercy when I was your enemy. Now I return, not alone, but with an army, not to conquer, but to protect, not to dominate, but to stand beside you as equals. Kay felt tears on his face, and he did not care about protocol or professionalism. You did not owe us this, Lily. We just did what anyone should. Lily smiled gently. Exactly. You did what anyone should do. But most do not. That is what makes it special. She gestured to the fleet behind her. These ships, these soldiers, they are not here out of obligation. They are here because the story of the independence and the human captain who saved an elvish princess has become legend in my empire. Everyone knows how you risked everything for someone you had every reason to hate. Diana Lopez, the navigation officer, stepped forward. Queen Lily, what happens now? Now, Lily said, we build something new together. The council chambers are being expanded to give humanity full representation. Human colonies will receive protection from the elvish fleet, and most importantly, she looked at Jake. We become friends. True friends, not just allies of convenience. Over the next few hours, the details were worked out. The 30 elvish warships moved into formation around the Hope, creating a defensive perimeter that would protect human space. Jake watched it happen, still struggling to believe it was real. That evening, he received a private communication from Lily. She appeared on the screen in simple clothes, Spark and Ember. Small again on her shoulders. I wanted to thank you privately. Lily said, away from all the politics and ceremony. You already thanked me. Jake said, you just gave humanity everything we have been fighting for. Lily shook her head. I gave humanity what you earned. She paused, then added, you know, when you found me in that escape pod, I was ready to die. I had lost everything, my family, my home, my purpose. But you showed me that there was still good in the universe, that there were still people who cared about doing the right thing. She wiped away a tear. You saved my life, Jake. But more than that, you showed me how to live. You taught me that power means nothing without compassion, that strength is nothing without kindness, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help someone who cannot help themselves. Jake felt his own tears return. You became a Queen Lily. You changed your entire civilization, and I did it by remembering what a human captain taught me. She smiled. So thank you, Jake Morrison, for being brave enough to pick up a broken stranger, for being kind enough to give her sanctuary, and for being wise enough to see past the walls that separated our people. The galaxy is changing, Lily said, and it is changing because you had the courage to do one simple thing. You helped someone who needed help. They talked for hours that night, sharing stories about the 7 years since they had last seen each other. Lily told him about the political battles and the struggles to reform the elvish government. Jake told her about his new command and the missions he had led. The conversation ended. Lily looked at him seriously. The galaxy will remember this day, Jake, the day when humans and elves became true allies. But I will always remember the day when a human captain chose kindness over fear. And I will always remember the princess who had the courage to stand up for what was right. Jake replied, even when it cost her everything. Lily smiled. That courage came from you. As the screen went dark, Jake sat back in his chair and looked out at the fleet of ships, human and elvish, flying together for the first time in history. 7 years ago, he had made a choice to save one life, and that choice had changed the galaxy.